I guess I don't have a. Oh, you can hear me out there. Wait, no. Let me mute. I guess I don't have a. Oh, you can hear me out there. Wait, no. Let me mute. I guess I don't have a. Oh, you can hear me out there. Wait, no. Let me mute. I guess I don't have a. Oh, you can hear me out there. Wait, no. Let me mute. I guess I don't have a. Oh, you can hear me out there. Wait, no. Let me mute. I guess I don't have a. Oh, you can hear me out there. Wait, no. Let me mute. I guess I don't have a.
dinner, he just kind of fell back and he suffered a stroke. I can still see it every time I think about it. He lost his speech and he was stuck in a wheelchair, bedridden for the rest of his life. 6 years before that, my second oldest brother was in junior high school. A kid fell on him in a PE class with a wrestling move. He paralyzed him. So, there were two people in my house in a wheelchair. Basketball gave an opportunity just to get out of the house and play. Didn't need anyone to kind of play with. Dr. J was my childhood brother. I always wanted to play like him. Don't do that already. One day I was going to get his students. Yeah, you gotta say it would be a dream. You know? It would be a dream when you be in NBA one time. Just a dream. Yeah. You guys academically fall off, so scholarships come available, and I go back as the coach. I was very persistent.
Oh. Okay. All right. Do we want to start with the pledge to the flag? Are we ready? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With us this evening for roll call, we have Glenn Bobek, trustee, Nicole Novak, trustee, Jay Grover, trustee, Jude Kuhn, district clerk, Dr. Brian Graham, superintendent, Ashley Dreyer, president, Susan Marston, vice president, Robin McCreary, trustee. We have Joy Lamarca, trustee, and we have with us Dr. Ruby Harris. She's the assistant superintendent for business. And we have Karen Cuddy Miller, assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. And we have Cheryl Cardone, assistant superintendent for pupil personnel with us. Now, do I name, I know there's some other people that have joined our call. Do I name the other people that are technically in our audience from the school, or no, is that it for roll call?
We get Mike Loria and John Fitzpatrick,
Okay.
Chris DeMarco and Jessica Hutchings, who will do a presentation under superintendent's report on vaping.
Okay, thank you. There's no announcements about exits to the building, but if you want to silence your cell phones so it doesn't disrupt the meeting, you can do that at this time. If I could have a motion to approve the April 21st, 2020 agenda for today, please.
No motion.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
objections?
Oops, sorry.
Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. If I could have an approval for the minutes or a motion to approve minutes from April 6, 2020, please.
No motion.
And a second.
I'll
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. And Jay Grover, I think I left you off the roll call. Jay Grover is here too. It's difficult when you don't see everyone sitting around at once. The Zoom meeting shows 3 or 4 people at one time. It shows about 4 people at one time. And you can't see everyone at once, at least not on my screen right now. Sorry about that. So we have some good news. Again, our music department was named one of the best 2020 best community for music education. This is the 9th year in a row. Dr. Graham, did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ashley. So this is very exciting. There aren't too many communities around the United States that have had this recognition for 9 years in a row. It really speaks to the tremendous effort and professionalism of our music educators, the students who put in all of the time, energy to become proficient and masterful in their craft, and the parents who support them every day with their lessons and bringing them to concerts in between softball games and soccer games and all the other wonderful activities our kids do. So I think for the board, you're going to see that the Dispatch will be doing a very nice article about this recognition, and we really want to applaud all the individuals who support the music program.
Okay, great. Congratulations to all of the music students and teachers. It certainly is an award that's well deserved and that you've worked hard for. Everything from our summer lessons to all of the different types of bands and orchestras that we have between jazz band and wind ensemble and all of the opportunities that students have, that teachers take the extra time to do with the Erie County Solo Fests and other opportunities. It definitely has paid off for our students and for our teachers in terms of highlighting the excellent work that they do and being a leader in Western New York in the area of music. So thank you again for everything that you do for our kids. Moving on to public comment session. Did we have anyone? I don't think we had anyone sign up for agenda items only. No? Okay, so we will move on to curriculum and instruction.
Great, thank you so very much. There is only one item today, and that is a board action item. Under the current graduation requirements for our graduating seniors in high school, we have a community service requirement that is typically required in order to pass our participation in government and or our AP government courses. That request currently requires 10 hours of community service and then attendance or participation at one board meeting and one town of Grand Island meeting. At this time, due to the COVID-19 and the CDC regulations for quarantine, it has been impossible for our graduating seniors to meet this requirement. So we are respectfully asking the Board of Education to waive that requirement for our graduating seniors this year.
Okay, if I could have a motion to approve curriculum and instruction A, please.
I'll motion.
I'll motion for that.
And second?
Or I'll second. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know who you heard.
Jay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. And moving on to personnel instructional, if I could have a motion to approve instructional PI1 through PI4, please. Bless you. Bless you. And a second? And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. All right, and under another personnel instructional, if I could have a motion to approve instructional personnel addendum, please.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
And a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0.
Actually, can I just say a few words about that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. As the district prepares to face the many fiscal impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, tonight the Board of Education has approved an agreement with Karen Cuddy Miller, the district's Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, which will assist the district in meeting the challenges to come. Ms. Cuddy Miller, to her credit, recognized the district's significant budgetary concerns and agreed to retire from the district effective July 7th, which is much earlier than she had originally intended, so that the district is better able to reorganize its administrative functions to conserve financial resources and reduce budgetary expenditures. I want to thank Ms. Cuddy Miller not only for her willingness to work cooperatively with the district to achieve this result, but also for her many contributions to the district during her employment here. We want to wish Ms. Cuddy Miller the very best in her retirement. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to personnel non-instructional. Could I have a motion to approve non-instructional PNI 1 and PNI 2, please?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. And now on to finance with Dr. Harris. Oh, my favorite.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of action items under finance, and then I have informational. The first action item is the risk assessment audit. This audit took place a couple of months ago. We actually met with the audit committee, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, to receive the information from the auditors, and that is on here for action if nobody has any questions about the audit.
If I could have a motion for approval, please,
I'll motion.
and a second.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, the next item on here is the corrective action plan, which has to be uploaded to the state. That will happen tomorrow. And basically it just says, these were the findings, these are the suggestions by the auditors, and this is the district's plan of action moving forward. It's a collective action item, so it took meetings with the different department heads or people that are impacted by this to develop a plan and to move it forward. So that is on here for action.
Okay, if I could have a motion to approve the corrective action plan, please,
I will motion.
and a
I'll
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0.
The next item is the contract 207. This deals with the capital project for roofing. This was the only contract that was left off when the capital project's last approval occurred, and that was because there were some additional areas that this can write will go over with. So like meant to wait you, this came for $100,000. So it's even more of a savings than we originally thought for this component of the project. So that is on here for approval.
Okay, if I could have a motion to approve contract 207, please,
I will motion.
and a second.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0.
All right, and then next is a request in reference to busy construction month. There is a concern with the number of possible board meetings during the summer that waiting for change order approval can actually slow down the process of the project moving forward and being completed in a timely manner during that time. So the request was that, or busy month, so it's the superintendent can approve and sign change orders up to the 35K just during those busy months, and then change orders over those limits can be emailed and the board can pull, just so we can keep things moving along. Questions?
I'm fine with that. I'll make a motion to approve.
I just have one thing to say. I think the change was made during the last capital project when we had all of those, what was it, temporary offices put in the back. So individual items actually collectively became more than the sign off limit. So as long as we're conscientious as to what they are, I'm okay with it.
Okay. And the process of the information being supplied to the board will definitely still occur once we know about them. It's just waiting the 2 or 3 weeks for the meeting. So definite discussion prior will occur. I'll make note of that.
Thank you. Okay, Glenn made a motion. Can we have a second, please?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0.
The next item on here is just transfers under 15,000 for informational purposes for the board. And then the final item is the budget presentation for tonight.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Great. So Ruby, I'm gonna share my screen.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how this looks on my end.
Of course. Okay. Can the board see? Can you guys see the first slide?
No.
Nope.
We see.
I cannot.
I see
Right.
Jay.
Right to the
first slide.
All right. Oh, hold on. Let me just figure this out. Hold on. Let me try. Oh, I know. Let me try this trick. Okay. Let's save that. Let's try this.
I thought my eyes were seeing things. Nicole's got this lamp in the background that keeps changing colors. I'm like,
no,
I've been locked up too long. I've been locked up too long. I didn't want you guys to have to see my basement, so that's Kyler's lamp in her room. As long as it's really doing it and it's not just my eyes. Like
It's
that.
not your eyes. My desk is in the basement. They have desks in their rooms.
Thanks for being patient. Just want to do this. Download it. Okay, let's see if this works. Thanks for being patient. Let's see if I am successful here. Go here. Here we go. Can you see the presentation now?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thanks for being patient. Just a little tricky with the Mac. So again, as we've shared over and over again, the work done to prepare this budget has been a true collaborative team effort from all our principals, our supervisors, the Board of Education, all working in concert with the district, with Ruby, to get to this point today. So I do want to thank everybody for their work and effort. Today, we're going to talk about revenue and retirement updates and talk about the proposed budget, bus proposition, proposed tax increase, and the budget calendar. I'll turn it over to Ruby to talk about revenue.
Okay, so not much has changed since the last time you saw this slide a couple weeks ago. This is just again showing what the real property tax levy is proposed to be, where state aid is. This also shows the pandemic adjustment and then the federal CARES restoration being added back in. So this is pretty straightforward as of the last meeting. I just like to show the picture again so people are reminded what our aid areas are.
Good. Any questions? Okay, thank you. So today, as far as retirement updates, we now have the approval of the retirement for our assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, and we're recommending not replacing that position for the 2020-2021 school year. Additionally, as we shared with the board during our last budget presentation, we do intend to replace the band director, our Spanish teacher, physics teacher, the special education teacher, the CTE teacher, and the elementary music teacher. But our recommendation is not to replace that reading teacher who retired. The plan there is to make sure that there are 3 reading teachers at youth, 3 reading teachers at Kegabyne, and the reading teaching assistant that was part of the team at youth will transfer over to Kegabyne. So at the end of the day, we'll have 3 reading teachers at Kegabyne plus a certified reading teaching assistant and 3 reading teachers at youth. Okay, Ruby?
Drum roll, the gap is closed, thank goodness. So the proposed budget is $64,626,568. That is a 1.54% increase from the 2019-2020 budget. This goes into our major expenditure areas. You will see that these numbers have changed slightly due to the fact that areas of the budget have been reduced to close the gap. So clearly the largest areas are salaries and benefits, and everything else is laid before you. So this shows a $1.4 million in budget to budget increase. This then goes through each individual department area. So you're going to see HR, instructional, school building, and so forth. And this is just a piece by piece breakdown, some of which you've seen in the major expenditure areas, and then some just smaller areas of the budget. Go to the next one. And then this is a continuation. You will see a lot of red here. I'm going to discuss that in a future slide that's going to come up. But this just shows piece by piece. So if somebody wants to know how much was increased in a certain department or certain area, they would be able to easily identify that. But you will see that the budget gap at the bottom is 0. So that matches up with the other slides you saw.
So I think the board has seen this slide already, but this just represents the changes that we're proposing and the ability to cover these changes internally for our district. So we did talk about these changes at the last budget presentation. Ruby, I think the only thing that's remaining is the request to transfer to food service.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions about this slide?
No.
Okay, thank you. So with working with our principals, our supervisors, working with Ruby, scrubbing, everything, this slide represents a lot of the items that have been removed from the budget, starting with the capital outlay. I think if the board recalls, when Dick Hitzkes was an interim business official with us, he had recommended that we begin a capital outlay project every year. As the board knows, we get aid back on that, and it's good aid. We get about 74% back on the dollar, but we have to front load that $100,000 in the budget. So you'll see that as being removed as we move into the next school year. Additionally, you're going to see deductions in conference and travel, contractual reductions that Ruby can speak to each of these line items. Transportation supplies, reductions in the BOCES budget, the reduction of the reading teacher, salaries shifting into federal grants, the reduction of the assistant superintendent for curriculum, special education tuition reductions, and using our federal grants to support not only salaries but benefits for personnel. Ruby, is there anything you wanted to highlight on this slide?
So clearly there are a lot of reductions. As you know, the last time we had a meeting, the gap was about $500,000, and before that it was 1.3 million. So there are some things that I know through a lot of discussion were not things that people necessarily wanted to reduce. There are things that within a year or two, if the funding is there, I definitely would like to see come back, such as capital outlay, conference and travel, different things. But really when it comes to budgetary reductions, it was reductions across the board. The conference and travel line is not just, building level conference and travel. That was a decision to take away conference and travel for all lines. And then on a case by case, we can review. And if people want to do transfers to allow for things to occur because they feel that it's really needed for next year, there will be discussion around it. I just really want to thank all the administrators and staff that we worked with to get to this point, because nobody likes to hear that you're going to have to do the same with less or cut back for a year to move forward. That's it.
Thank you, Ruby.
Okay, so this is just a quick recap. It shows all of our revenue sources, and then it breaks out expenses into salaries, benefits, and other costs. And as expressed before, the difference to the tax cap or the gap is zero. So it is a balanced budget. This is the bus proposition for next year. You will see 365 passenger buses, 1 3/4 wheelchair bus, 1 wheelchair van, and the 2 Ford F-350s. And this has been reduced by, I believe, 2 buses, and the delivery van were taken off. So this will keep us stagnant from 1920 to 2021 school year. This just shows a recap of the budget, so change from one year to next in reference to the property tax levy as well as the proposed budget as it currently stands. And I think it's always nice to continuously show where we stand with fund balance. So that is what you find on this slide. This goes into the proposed tax rate. This slide has looked the same probably the last 2 presentations, showing a 2.26% as the allowable tax levy increase, and that is what we're proposing. All right, last slide. This is just the development session schedule. And you'll see some things listed here in red, and that's just to highlight them out because it's shifted or changed. Originally, the request was for the April 21st meeting to be not only the final presentation, but also be the meeting with board action. You will see on here that I have asked if May 11th is a possibility for that. And the reason for that is because at the end of the month, the governor is supposed to give an update on his first quarter review when it comes to state aid. We don't know what that looks like. It could change. It could stay the way it is. So my thought was, instead of instead of adopting the budget tonight, we could wait till that is provided and make any necessary adjustments. But the board does have the option to approve tonight if you guys would like to.
Okay, very good. So with respect to that presentation, are there any additional questions?
I did not have any. Anyone have any questions?
None here.
I'm good.
Okay.
So
Would you like to wait to the next board meeting for approval?
Yes.
I would.
I mean, I would.
Yes.
Yes.
See what happens.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
okay,
Okay. Oh,
right. Is that working now?
all right, moving on then to, we have nothing under special education, pupil, personnel services, and nothing under policy. So that brings us to the superintendent's report.
So thank you very much. To begin with, I'd like to invite Mr. Loria and Mr. Fitzpatrick, Mr. DeMarco, and Mrs. Huckins to report to the board everything from research related to vaping detectors and information about a comprehensive plan that we're putting together to promote the health and wellness of all of our students through an anti-vaping focus. So if we could start, I'd like to introduce Mr. Loria, who will share some of his research and information from the high school perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Graham. We've done a lot this year in terms of researching from a couple different angles. First of all, we visited a local area high school, Maryvale High School, who recently installed vape detectors in their buildings and talked a little bit about how it benefited their program. We've been on the phone with FlySense, who's the main manufacturer of the devices that have been used throughout the United States. And we've also spent some time coming up with some strategies for moving forward with remediating students who have been caught vaping or have been in trouble, whether it's their first offense or other. So I'm going to start with kind of just some of the facts that we learned. The vape devices are approximately $995 for the first year. So those, now sometimes the FlySense company recommends having actual devices, but they also create a dummy device with a significantly cheaper cost. So they recommend putting some real devices in, some dummy devices in, and it keeps the kids, not really knowing which ones are real and which ones are fake, and it still allows it to be a deterrent for some of our students. It's a $495 activation fee, and that first year all of the software is included, but there is a maintenance fee for the software every year per device of $150. So if you have 100 or if you have 10 devices, that would be a $1,500 a year maintenance fee for the software updates. Installation fees are also not including, it's not including our own labor that has to be done to install these and wire them into our technology network, as well as putting them up in each of the individuals' bathrooms in either building, high school, middle school, maybe even elementary. So we spent some time counting bathrooms in our building. We estimated about 22 devices would be needed for our high school, which if you look at that's kind of, we estimated about a $21,000 figure based on that information. And then we added in the middle school, which would probably be an equal amount. So that was where we came up with like a $40,000 estimate in the beginning. And continuation fees for those would be about $3,300 for each additional for each building for each year moving forward. So just to chat about some of the pros and cons, some of the pros that we came up with were really that in talking with the principal over at Maryvale and talking with some principals on the listservs of other high schools, it has seemed to be working. They said that, it worked hand in hand with not only them using these devices, but also establishing teacher teams who would go into these bathrooms and handle some of the low-level consequences and bring it to the administrator. But when they installed the devices, what the devices actually do is they send either an email alert or a text alert directly to the administrators or whoever else you want to get those alerts, so that they can immediately go on the cameras and decide whether it was those to investigate the few students that were in there during that short window or period of time. Maryville did say that they went from 50 incidents in 17-18 to 37 in 18-19 to only 3 at the point we visited mid-year in 19-20. I do want to note, though, that we looked into our own incidents for vaping, and we had a very similar trend without having those devices in the last 3 years. We went from 54 incidences in 17-18 to 31 last year, and currently when we closed, we were at about 8 incidences for this year. So we have also seen a decreasing trend, and that doesn't necessarily mean that kids aren't doing it. It just means that maybe they're getting smarter or maybe they're hiding it better. But some of the things the Maryville administration brought up that students are doing is, using dryer detergents. Some of the newer devices certainly don't emit as much odor, and they were seeing that those were not quite as effective in some of the detectors. So when we talked to FlySense, we did ask them about that. And that was one of the areas that kind of caused us to pause a little bit, because we weren't really satisfied with their answer. Me having a biology background, I asked specifically, like, what's the chemical you're detecting for? And I got kind of an answer of like, well, we measure the ppms of the particulates, but they didn't really name a particulate or a specific chemical that they were really triggering to try to locate. So, I kind of felt like they weren't really addressing the one question I know many of you had, which is like, are they really going to be as effective moving forward as these devices become more and more, fragrant free, so to speak. So moving forward, we did talk about the fact that with FlySense that they do have software updates annually, that the devices do get better over time with detecting false positives. So there is some built-in software tools that when there is a false positive from, like, whether it's Axe body spray or some other perfume, you can actually register it in their software, and the software almost like recognizes that scent moving forward, so that false positive won't trigger it as you move forward time and time again. So, and Maryville did mention that as well, and they saw that over time they did see less and less false positives. They're also coming up with some new generations in the future, one of which was kind of intriguing to us, which would be that there would be a light bulb or little mini light outside of the bathrooms, so that if a student is, if it's students in there and the device is triggered, that light will pop on. So if you're walking by as a teacher, if you're walking by as a hall monitor, you would actually be able to see what whether someone's in there. You could walk in right away and address the situation in that capacity. So one of the recommendations, let me just move my little screen down. One of the cost factors that we were a little bit concerned about comparing us to Maryville was that they recommended one device for 12 by 12 square foot area, and our bathrooms are significantly larger than that. So the initial estimate that we kind of projected with 22 devices or 21 devices would actually probably have to be higher, because in many of our bathrooms, specifically our locker room areas, the area and the square footage is much higher than that 12 by 12 recommendation. So FlySense indicated to us that they would actually have to come out and scan and screen our area to give us a real true estimate of really how many they would recommend in each of our bathrooms and our locker room areas. So when they said that, we were kind of hesitant because we were concerned with the cost just significantly being driven up. And we also had talked to them about them developing their new generation. And we, had this conversation very quickly right before our closure. And we had at that point decided that maybe it was best to wait a little bit and see what this new generation looks like, to maybe have a chance to get them out, because we really didn't have a chance to get them out. And with the COVID-19 closure, that became even more difficult. So at this point, our recommendation is really to kind of hold off on that, especially with our current budget situation, and to look at those, to continue to look at those options for the future, but also to keep an eye on our numbers, because like I said, they have significantly decreased. We also spent some time talking about discipline, and as I mentioned, our consequences have gone down over time. But one of the things our high school administration worked on this year was developing a Google Classroom for students who are caught with vaping. Currently, students who are caught with vaping get a 3-day in-school suspension on their first offense, 5-day in-school suspension on their second offense, and typically a 5-day on their third offense with what's called a superintendent's hearing. That means that we would recommend a suspension beyond that first 5 days. That could anywhere be from 2 weeks to 4 weeks with some interventions with kids escaping drugs. We're recommending that we looked into many online programs that would be used in our in-school suspension room to teach kids about the dangers of vaping. We looked at Safe Schools, we looked at a couple others, and we really weren't happy with any of them, so we decided to develop our own Google Classrooms. We took some of Jessica's resources, she'll talk to you in a second, and put some activities and assignments together so that our students who are caught on their first offense could utilize that program moving forward, and hopefully get some benefit from it. And I think Mr. DeMarco is going to talk to you a little bit too about some of the proactive measures that our health and phys ed teachers are taking in the curriculum. So at this point, that's our recommendation. I know that some people still might have some questions, and you can certainly ask me if you have any of those. I know I don't have all the answers, but at this time, we just didn't feel like it was a wise investment knowing what we knew now.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Loria. Mr. Fitzpatrick, can you just share from the middle school perspective some of the some similar information and also any partnerships that you have for?
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for allowing us to discuss this in greater detail. You know, in the middle school, we have found that our vaping incidents have drastically decreased, considering what is drastic. If we had 4 or 5 incidents 3 years ago, we had 1 incident currently this year. So given that, we're constantly searching for new ways to be more proactive with our students. And really, essentially, I think at the middle school level is engaging them to understand how they're being targeted as a consumer audience through Instagram or any social media message. I know Jessica Hutchings worked a lot with our students on that in a presentation that she had arranged with Kids Escaping Drugs, which was a very significant presentation, which we have given now for the last 2 or 3 years. We're also, through Jessica, trying to reestablish a very good connection with Kids Escaping Drugs, where not only is the vaping presentation going to be done, but we're hoping to bring back a graduate or student from Kids Escaping Drugs so that our students are exposed to, I guess, what not to do in terms of, and what not to get involved in, and where that could lead them in a negative way. And other than those 2 things, which have been very significant for us, it's supporting our health curriculum in whatever way possible. I know Mr. DeMarco has more information regarding that, but in the middle school, we find it's becoming more effective to search out for proactive and preventative measures to raise awareness and knowledge that our students are actually being targeted in a very severe way to buy these products.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. Mr. DeMarco, can you share with the board the actions that incorporate through the curriculum, either through health or physical education, that'll really be proactive when we're talking about all of our kids K through 12?
Right, sure, I'd love to. Thanks, and I appreciate the opportunity. I really love to hear, when Mike and John talk about the proactive side of this. I just feel that, if we're trying to catch our kids, we're always, we're from behind, and the manufacturers are coming out with new things, and everybody else, to disguise this stuff. I think our best really way of addressing the issue is like what we've done with many of our other areas, and that's in the area of education. So in our middle school, what we've done is at the 8th grade curriculum, the vaping is folded right in with the tobacco unit. And so it's handled in the same manner. So the education for the kids in our middle school at 8th grade, they're getting that information on vaping and the hazards of it and the practices and everything with that right along with the tobacco part of it. In 7th grade, it's a little bit different. One of the things, again, that we continue to talk about is the area and the importance of mental health, because a lot of the issues that we see when kids are vaping deals with peer pressure. And so what we're trying to do again is get our kids to the point where they're confident enough. So not only armed with the knowledge, but then the confidence that they can say, no, we're going to make decisions that are a little bit better, for us. The same thing holds true in the high school. So we know that our kids in the high school can receive health anywhere from grades 12 through or 9 through their senior year. So what the high school has done is they've incorporated the vaping in along with the tobacco, and they're using the Stanford curriculum. So it's a vaping toolkit, and they have a series of presentations from that toolkit that they fold in along with their tobacco unit. So that's what the high school we're doing in our health classes there. And then, like I said to you, as far as our phys ed classes go, with the New York State, with the new learning standards that have just been adopted, one of the components deals with social and emotional knowledge. And that's the area I think that our phys ed teachers are extremely, extremely good at. Building and developing relationships with kids, and also working in that area of self-esteem. So again, that they're a little more confident in who they are and respect for themselves as well as with one another. So those are the areas that we're looking at in our health and phys ed curriculum. And if you have any questions, I'd be, happy to try to address those with you as well.
Thank you, Chris. Jessica Hutchings is our social worker. She spent about 10 years with Kids Escaping Drugs. I know, Jessica, you've put together a parent and student program that we were just about ready to launch before the pandemic and the closure of schools.
Mm-hmm.
If you could just share with the board the plans that you developed with our elementary principals and any other important information related to resources to support parents and students with this.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity to discuss this topic tonight. Obviously, it's something that's near and dear to my heart, given the first 10 years of my career. I had worked closely with the elementary buildings to roll out a vaping program that was designed to be given to students and parents at the same time, so that it would be an opportunity to engage families in discussion, make sure parents were aware of the most up-to-date information, and we were scheduled to roll this out 3 days after school closed. So it was ready to roll and is still ready to roll when we can all be together again. But that program essentially covers some of the major topics that are really important, not only for our youngest students to be aware of, but again, also for the parents. I personally feel that educating parents and other family members about this ever-evolving trend is as important as educating our students. And so that program will focus mainly on, first of all, the health consequences of vaping, which are ever-changing, as we're finding out. Obviously, over the last year or so, there's been many more deaths that have been tied to vaping. It also covers the safety concerns that are present with vaping, which unfortunately a lot of young people are not aware of. Those include these vaping devices exploding, which can be a really scary and very random thing. A lot of the presentation focuses very heavily on, as Mr. Fitzpatrick mentioned, how the media and how these various vaping companies are manipulating our youngest generations to use their products. And that's the piece of it that I think is really, really important for parents to be aware of, because what's happening with all of this marketing is that it happens on platforms that parents aren't always on. And so unfortunately, a lot of parents don't see a lot of the advertisements as they roll out to these really young kids. And so a good majority of that presentation really focuses on what are those platforms that are being used, what types of media messages might be seen, and it really helps parents recognize what those look like so they can be aware of them. And then it talks a lot about the positive anti-vaping programs that are out there. The Truth Campaign came out with a really great anti-vaping campaign that actually a lot of students have talked about being good. It's pretty effective with them. And just really kind of continuously getting this information out there. I feel too that it's not just a one and done thing. This is information that we need to roll out to the families of our school district continuously. And it's information that's important for students to know at every age level, but really at the primary level, one of the most important things to do is talk with the students too about how do you respond to a situation where you may be asked to participate in something involving vaping. And so a lot of that is role playing with them, the skills that they would need to stand up for themselves and make positive decisions regarding their health and their wellness. That's as important as educating them about the bad things that could happen if they choose to engage in that behavior. In addition to the program that is prepared to be rolled out to the youngest of our students, the other thing I want to make you really well aware of, I'm a member of the Western New York Anti-Vaping Coalition, and that coalition involves organizations like Roswell, the health departments from all the different counties in Western New York, Kids Escaping Drugs, all of the community substance abuse prevention coalitions that exist in Western New York. And we were meeting monthly prior to the COVID closures. And there's a program being developed that's a collaborative effort of all of those organizations. They're taking the program that Kids Escaping Drugs initially was rolling out in reactive situations, and they're taking that information and adding more information to that and making it also a program that could be used proactively and not just in a reactive situation where you've already identified a student who's developed a problem with vaping. And then the only other program that is out there that may be something we really want to look into and take advantage of is a program called Catch My Breath. It's a free program. It's grant funded, so it's available to school districts all over the place at no cost. It's peer reviewed, it's evidence based, and it's something that can be done in a classroom. It fits well into a health curriculum, and it's 4 40-minute lessons. They offer one for a 5th and 6th grade audience, one for a 7th and 8th grade audience, and one for a high school audience. So it's certainly something that we could look more into and be able to utilize at no cost to the school district.
Thank you, Jessica. For our board, does the board have any questions for Mike or John or Jessica or Chris?
I had a quick question for John. I know that it sounds like in all of our buildings, the numbers of incidences of students being caught vaping has decreased. Do you think that that's because students are more educated on the dangers of vaping and that sort of thing? Or do you think it's because the devices are more difficult to detect?
I actually think it's for 3 reasons. I think it's education. I think the technology has changed. And I also think we're routinely checking the bathrooms more frequently. We also have less bathrooms than the high school does. So we actually only have like 2 major bathrooms. We usually keep our cafeteria bathrooms locked, which is our 3rd set of bathrooms until lunchtime, of course. But I think it's education. I think the technology has changed to make it, a little bit more hidden. We don't want to be naive. I'm sure there are students who are vaping, but it's, they just haven't been caught.
Can I just add to that? When we rolled out the Kids Escaping Drugs presentation at the middle school earlier in the school year, I had the opportunity to have a lot of discussion with our students about that very thing. And the general consensus among the students this year, as even compared to last year when I was at Grand Island as a member of Kids Escaping Drugs, they're really starting to change their opinions on how bad it is for them. It's slowly starting to become something that's not the cool thing to do anymore. And they're beginning to see it very similar to cigarette smoking. And I think a lot of that has to do with some of the really great anti-vaping campaigns that have been rolled out in the last couple of years.
Great, thank you. Did anyone else have any questions about vaping or on the vaping presentations?
Mine was more about the discipline of it. When we say suspensions, are we saying in school or outside of school? Because, I mean, now with the pandemic and the kids being home, we know that some of our kids are not doing their schoolwork and keeping up with it. It's not really good for our kids to be home. Are we going to switch that to more of an in-school suspension? Plus, I mean, if it's out school, I mean, they're vaping at home.
Mike, can you talk about the way it's tiered at the high school?
Yes. In most cases, vaping suspensions are in school. If there's reason to think, or it's sometimes a situation in which students admittedly are vaping THC or marijuana, Sometimes that could be an out of school, but typically we keep them in school. Although we have multiple tier disciplines, as I kind of said earlier, alluded to our 3-day, 5-day, and then our 5-day with our superintendent's hearings. Any of those can be really in any way. We have a lot of resources available to us. Most of them, again, are in school. Some of them, if they're especially the longer term suspensions, might be our AAP program after school, in which students come in from 2:15 until approximately 4 o'clock. We have had incidents or situations in which students were caught vaping, and then they have been in the in-school suspension room, and then were subsequently caught vaping again in the in-school suspension room. And in those situations, we don't keep them in school because they've gone through that progressive discipline. So I won't say that the kids are never put out of school, but in most cases, they're usually always in school, at least to start.
Okay, good.
And Mike, I think also earlier you talked about the strong partnership we have with the face-to-face program and Kids Escaping Drugs. So you'd mentioned if students are using vape technology to enhance or to add, illegal drugs into those technologies, those are automatic referrals to the face-to-face Kids Escaping Drugs program, and that could then connect families actually in a proactive way to other counseling. So, Mike, I know you're aware of that. Jessica, could you just share with the board a little bit about that?
Sure. So Kids Escaping Drugs, I mentioned the program that they're collaborating on with the Anti-Vaping Coalition. That's designed to be more proactive. But the program that they already have in existence is a reactive program. And essentially what they did is took their early intervention program and made a version of it that's appropriate for students who are identified as vaping. So they go to Kids Escaping Drugs. They are required to attend with a parent or a guardian if they're under the age of 18. They are assessed by an addictions counselor. And they also meet with young people who were addicted to vaping. In those situations, obviously, these are kids who used other substances and became addicted to other substances. But they work with kids who have been through the Renaissance campus who have acknowledged that quitting the nicotine and quitting the vaping in many situations has been more difficult for them than quitting the other substances. So they also have that opportunity to have that one-on-one talk with a peer who has had experience with a vaping addiction. But what's most important about that program is all of this educational information is rolled out to them. So they're learning about the health and safety consequences. Again, the parent is required to be there. So the parent is also learning of all of these consequences, oftentimes for the first time. You wouldn't believe how many parents would come to that program and tell us afterwards they had no idea how many layers there was to all of this. So I think what's key about it is that the parent, again, is required to participate, and that those kids who do attend get the opportunity to hear from kids their own age who are saying, you don't want to become addicted to this. It is very, very difficult to quit. And then if there truly is an addiction, their referrals are made for whatever level of counseling or support is deemed necessary.
And Dr. Graham, can I add one thing?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I also want to say John did a really nice job of summing up a lot of the different reasons. I think one of the other things that's really helped us is the anonymous tips option on our website for kids, because a lot of our students are getting sick of vapes being in their bathrooms. They simply get frustrated. So a lot of them have been going to the anonymous tips, and we've been catching a lot of students vaping, or at least onto certain students who are maybe even selling vape devices, because of the tips that students have left us on those platforms. So I just want to say, I think that's another reason that, kids coming forward and doing the right thing, we always appreciate. We always encourage that. And we always tell them to do the right thing and come tell us when something isn't right. And a lot of them aren't, courageous enough to show their face in our office, but they do it in that other way. So I think that's helped too.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, everyone. Right. Dr. Graham, you had an update on the COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I just want to go over some information related to COVID-19 and some updates. You may already be following this very carefully, but in Erie County, there have been 9,106 residents who have been tested for COVID-19. Of those tested, there are 2,286 and 84 confirmed cases in Erie County, and there have been tragically 162 deaths. Additionally, we know that there have been 35 individuals on Grand Island who have tested positive for COVID-19. Everybody is aware, but I just want to make sure I repeat it, that the governor has closed schools through May 15th. If the governor wanted schools to reopen after May 15th, then we would resume school on the next school day after the 15th, which I believe is the 18th. But right now, none of the superintendents have any information as to whether or not the governor will continue extending the school closure after May 15th. I think the board would join me and loudly thank all of our food service professionals, bus drivers, volunteers, teachers, and administrators for working through spring recess. Their professionalism and attention to all of our students is greatly appreciated. Last week, we put out an all call to our faculty, admin, and staff to sew and make some cloth face coverings for our employees who have been assisting with these food deliveries. I am so proud to say many have responded. I would like to thank George Smith, Jill Ungaro, Cindy Wynn, Cindy Booker, Marie Mergel, Denise Dunbar, Janine Scabalia, Carrie Nowak, Mary Gens, and Tracy Kraus. We are so grateful to all who have responded. So if I missed somebody, I apologize. There's been many people who are interested in helping. Additionally, Tracy Kraus has a connection with Operation Protect the Protectors, and she has put in a large order to support all faculty and staff in our school district. Additionally, I'm so proud of our teachers for making sure that the assignments given to our students are reasonable and are created with the understanding that we need to focus on each child's access and opportunity to engage in learning from home. For many of our students, it is very difficult for them to be successful with new instruction as we head into the fourth quarter, depending on their needs. I'm very grateful to teachers and administrators who are demonstrating great wisdom, compassion, and understanding during these difficult times. In my role as a superintendent, I meet 3 times a week with all of the superintendents in Erie County. We've been discussing at great length the importance that no child should academically be harmed as a result of the COVID-19 school emergency closure. We are oftentimes discussing what are the home circumstances for our students and their ability, whether it's physical, cognitive, or their social emotional skill set that they have as they try to engage in home learning. In the past 5 weeks, we have continuously discussed these concepts of student access, opportunity, and equity as it relates to that home learning. That is why I'm really proud of our teachers, our therapists, our counselors, our social workers, our administrators who are keeping this as a primary focus. Patrick Smith and his team of SRP food service professionals, along with Teresa Lizaday and her transportation team, continue to do amazing work on behalf of our students and their families. Over spring break, we continue to serve hundreds upon hundreds of students during that the traditional spring break week. And our team is focused on providing for the needs of our students and the families for now and into the future. Robin Kwiatek and Josh Nichols and the entire IT department has been getting ready to finalize second grade iPads to be delivered to our second grade families. They were working to solve a filtering issue that was critical to solve before distribution. And I know that these iPads will be delivered to second graders very soon. You know, I'm pretty fortunate to work with an exceptional group of superintendents from the Erie and Niagara School Superintendents Association. We are very concerned that the New York State revenue will fall far short of the expenditures needed to respond during this pandemic. As an association of regional superintendents, we are advocating for our federal government to include public schools as part of a federal CARES stimulus package. Our association recently composed a letter, a very lengthy letter, and that letter is going to be approved tomorrow and sent to Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, Congressman Higgins, and also sent to the former Congressman Collins' office. If it's okay, I'd like to share just some excerpts of the letter just so that our community can understand what we're advocating for. The families we serve are currently experiencing unprecedented and very often crushing emotional distress associated with this health crisis. We know that these things will increase and that the need of student mental health services and greater support for families will be needed once classes resume. A freeze in state funding will fall hardest upon school districts in Western New York. School districts in Western New York will lag well behind the rest of the state in overall school funding and possess the least capacity to raise local funding through property taxes. Furthering our budgetary concerns is the fact that our overall state budget will only be balanced with a federal infusion of aid to deal with this pandemic in New York State. We're hearing that the gap in the state budget is anywhere between $10 and $15 million. As a group of superintendents in Erie and Niagara County, we support the bipartisan request of the National Governors Association for $500 billion to stabilize funding in state governments to offset the revenues and losses from this public health crisis. We also want to amplify our voices for our county, our towns, and villages who are similarly in dire need for federal relief dollars. In our view, such an appropriation should minimally be included at $17 billion for New York State and $1 billion directly to support New York State public schools. The school age portion, we believe, should be targeted directly for public schools to be appropriated via an act of the legislator and our governor. In our letter to our federal representatives, we're applauding them for their efforts that are currently underway to present and enact a significant federal relief packages to states and local governments. We know, and we know that they know, that New York State is the epicenter of this pandemic and that our state and local costs of responding are significantly above any other state. This fact will lead to ongoing challenges for school funding, not just next year, but for several years into the future. So in our letter, we greatly appreciate their support and encourage them to act. And I just wanted to let the board know that I intend to connect with Patricia Eichel, who is the president of the District Parent Teacher Council. And I'm going to ask for her support in asking our parents to share a common message with our federal representatives because we really will be needing support in the future. So I just want to thank the board for letting me give that COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Dr. Graham. Moving on to the Board of Education report, we have a Erie 1 BOCES budget vote and election. If I could have a motion to approve the BOE Erie 1 BOCES budget vote and election.
I will make a motion.
I will second.
Thanks, Jay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Actions? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. And the public comment session, general items not included on the agenda. I don't believe we have anyone for that. So we will move on to committee of the whole items and information for the roundtable, starting with Glenn.
I have nothing.
Jay?
I'd just like to thank Chris, Mike, John, Jessica for the vaping information. It was very informative. I really appreciate that. And continued thanks to everyone for everything they're doing. So we appreciate it.
Thanks, Nicole.
I just want to thank all the staff who are helping our students in all the many different ways and all the continued support that we're getting from everyone. Stay safe.
Okay, I'm all set. Sue?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Joy?
I'm all set, thank you.
Robin?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, Carol?
Yes, just really quickly wanted to let everybody know that we are starting the interview process for the Keggevine Elementary principal. We're starting a screening process next week. And we will be screening candidates for 20 minutes and then putting those candidates that make it through that round to a larger committee. One of the members of the committee, we would like to invite a board member to that committee. So if one of you could let Dr. Graham and myself know who that board member would be, and probably by the end of the week or sometime next week, that would be great.
Do you have a specific date next week set for that, just so members?
So Ashley, we don't have a date next week for the large committee. Our dates next week are Monday, our meeting with the small committee to discuss the screening candidates. And then on Thursday, the committee will be screening candidates for 20 minutes. So I would say probably the second week of May, we would be going to the larger committee. And we obviously not doing it in person. We're going to be doing it virtually.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So does anyone do you want us to do that via email, Cheryl? Is that how you wanted us to email you and Dr. Graham? Anyone interested? Is that how you want us to volunteer for that?
However you want to relay that message is fine. You know, it would be one when we interviewed for Max's position last year, Nicole was that board member that sat on the committee. So you guys could decide which one of you would like to sit on the committee. That would be great.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Karen.
Great. One very quick update. When we were at the board meeting 2 weeks ago, I provided a UPK update indicating that we were going to attempt to make a modification in our UPK application process due to the COVID-19 and move to an online registration. We have, in 2 weeks, had 81 lottery applicants. So moving to the online registration was truly a fabulous idea. We are able to at least begin to process that. As I mentioned last time, I believe the UPK lottery draw right now is scheduled for May 19th at 1 p.m. Because the POM order is still scheduled through May 15th, I fully anticipate that we'll have to make some kind of a modification in that. But, you know, we'll wait until we know. But it's encouraging that we've got 81 applicants so far. That number is an uptick from recent years. In the past couple of years, we've had about 60 or 70 applicants. So we may actually want to consider maintaining a UPK lottery application online into the future, with the reservation being only when they finally have the paper in hands that prove residency and age, that they could actually be entered formally. But so far, it's been a very successful process. I'm thrilled that we were able to see such a quick response, literally within days, and that has been a continuous response. And I think the uptick in registration also is indicative of what we've seen recently in our kindergarten registrations. So that might be something we want to give consideration to as we move forward this year under the COVID-19 thing. How do we get a handle on our kindergarten registrations before we open up brick and mortar? But that's just a quick update to provide you with that information. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ruby Harris.
Next meeting, I will have a budget for hopeful vote to occur. And I just want to take a second to reiterate what Dr. Graham had already said about the thanks between a mass that are out, which I now have, to staff members really showing up and providing as much assistance as needed, whether that is making things in the background or physically bringing themselves into buildings so things can happen seamlessly in the background. So I'm just very appreciative of that during this time because it doesn't happen everywhere. So that's it.
Thank you. Jude, did you have anything?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Hey, and Dr. Graham.
Yep, just one bit of news. Before the board meeting tonight, I received a wonderful email, and I want to congratulate Craig Poissant. Craig has been awarded the ECMEA and Buffalo Philharmonic Award of Excellence in Music Education. So congratulations to Craig. And of course, we've talked a lot about Grand Island and it being a wonderful community for music education. So this is just another example. So congratulations to Craig Poissant.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, we just have a date to mention. May 11th is our next Board of Education meeting. And if there's nothing else, if I could have a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting at 8:44 p.m.
I'll motion.
I'll
In a second. Did someone second?
A second.
Oh, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
objections? Any abstentions? Motion carried 7-0. Thank you.
Thank everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. Nice seeing you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.